Welcome, everybody, to the show. This is Comic Clipping Show number 162 for February 26th, 2024. I almost said 2026, which would be the show from the future, but no, it is 2024. We are back from Winterfest. We got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about today, so let me put up the ticker down in the notes below and show everybody a big thank you for coming out this evening. So thanks so much for doing so. That may have been the first time I've used that particular intro music, but it's been queued up in the system for a little bit now. I do use Epidemic Sound for the music on this particular show. On other productions, I've tended to use Dan's music, but that aside, so I want to welcome everybody, remind everybody to thumbs up the video if you have not done so already, subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. Tonight we are going to talk about Civil War battles. We're also going to recap Winterfest, and we'll be talking about some Civil War action that happened there, because we played not a battles game, but a campaigns game, so looking forward to that, and we had a great time. We've also got some GMT update news, so we'll be going through that as well. And we'll, Mr. Thomas Prowell, thanks for stopping by. One of the games, we'll see some pictures of it, on the table at the recent Winterfest was, in fact, Axis Empire's Ultimate Edition. And we do, tonight, have on our clipping table Stonewall Sword from, as we're calling him, Hermensch Lutmensch. So thanks, Herman, for bringing us this fabulous game and fine series. And we will no doubt touch upon the Blind Swords series. Wendnard, thanks for stopping by. So before we get into any of that, where's my list of people? There we go. Okay, we have lost the list of people. Let's give a big shout out to Alan Salazar, Bob Kowalczyk, Brian Gash, Chad Kennedy, Charles Latorre, Chet Bell, Christopher Smith, DeWend Nard, thanks for stopping by, Daniel Silverthorne, David Zell, Groucho Marks, HUN644 New, the legend himself, Fucko, is here. Jason Williams, Jeff Anderson, Jeff Beeler, Jeffrey Edwards, Joe Faust from sunny Northeast Ohio. Actually was sunny here today. Joe Okabayashi, John Madison. John, was good to see you last week. John Stanley, Lee Grant, Marty Sample is here. Matt Davidson, Matt F., Meandering Mike, Michael Avanzini, Michael Schmaus, Michael Simon, Paulson, Perfidious Albion, Rob Moffat, Stacking Limit. Big shout out to Stacking Limit for stepping up for two things. Well, for three things, really. Thank you for your moderating talents. Also, there was a screw-up on the Patreon card. We have fixed that, and thanks to Stacking Limit for upping to the hero level. And shout-out to Patrick Riley for joining as the new patron of the week at the warrior level. But moving on, we have Steve-O. Stigler is here as expected. Tailwind, the Tabletop's Edge, is here. Doug, was great to get to play with you last week. Thomas Prowl, of course, is here. Vicky, thanks for stopping by. Vince Ree, William Bird, and Wolf Dog. And I Beat Cafe, I have missed you on the first pass. Eric Goebel, I've missed you on the first pass. So, big shout out to everybody who has come by this evening. And excellent. This is going to be Lee's Last Offensive. Downloaded? Is the Vassal module out? But in any case, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. There is links to support the channel in the video description, so check that out if you are so inclined. There is also a new-ish way to support the channel, which is to buy stuff that you were going to buy anyway from our friends at Noble Knight. So thank you, Noble Knight, the official sponsor of the Counter Clipping Show. So I'll probably flash this basically every week until I have a new update, which I do not have this week. But as announced last week, our initiative with our friends at Noble Knight to get a copy of Campaign for North Africa is now 58% of the way toward its goal. You can help out by buying stuff through the affiliate link that is in the video description, and that is much appreciated. We have made extremely rapid progress on this. So, anyway, let's start out by getting to the GMT news, I think. Let's get that out of the way. So we had a GMT update as of a few days ago. I think this happened as of when we were at Winterfest. So we open up with something that we'll see down when we get to the production calendar. They are breaking the items in the production calendar down a little differently than they have done in the past, and we'll see that down at the bottom. As usual, we are not going to read the whole thing here. If you want to read the whole thing, go read the whole thing on GMT's website. We are going to blow through this, focusing on the impact on the production calendar. So Ed Holtzman, thanks for stopping by, and Biasia Atkins, also thanks for stopping by. So this is an introduction to that production outlook change. So a new episode of GMT Talk with Sam London. Interestingly, Sam will be with us tomorrow on the Chit Show at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Looking forward to that. He's got a game on P500 with GMT Firefight Tacticals. We'll be talking about that. You can get to GMT Talk as a podcast as well if you so desire. What's shipping and what's next? They've shipped all this stuff. We'll talk about that when we talk to the shipping. They charged for France 40 plus the France 40 mounted map and Rebel Fury. I'm pretty sure I got charged. I should check that, but I was at Winterfest when it happened, so I probably didn't check that. The Plum Island Horror, by our good friend Hermensch Lutmensch, sold out basically instantaneously. And they did a rush shipment to get the copies back in stock, so it is back in stock, in addition to the expansion that is coming. We have an article in the Deccan Herald, which I believe to be an Indian news agency, on Vijayanagara, which is coming from GMT fairly soon. Some stuff from Playdeck. They're doing testing on Twilight Struggle Red Sea. These are the digital versions. Got some more information here on Defiance, which is by David Doctor and Mark Herman on the Ukraine conflict. We have a box back for Space Empire's All Good Things, which I personally have been pumped about for some time. We have, let's see here. We got GMT1 development update from Jason Carr. We've got, if I haven't mentioned, hold on. If I haven't mentioned, thank you, Mr. John Longshore, for this bottle of Mayor Pingree 5-year-old bourbon from the Detroit area. Apparently Mayor Pingree was a post-Civil War mayor of Detroit, and it's quite good. And I am not the only person to observe that during Winterfest, where a bunch of us got to enjoy it, but I did, in fact, bring about half the bottle home, something like that. Anyway, so this is good. I did not see this Molotov Cockatiel. Apparently, somebody asked the question about whether Space Empire's 4X expansion, All Good Things, will have AI art, and apparently that is not the case. Hopefully that is also not the case with Red Dust Rebellion as well. All right, so Vassal module updates in the pipeline here. We got a variety of designer interviews, including Liz Davidson talked to Herman Lutman, and Fred Serval talked to Brian Train, and we meaning Dan and I, talked to Ben Hull. And Sam is obviously making the tour, going around here, and we are clearly his fourth choice. Although, because there was no show last week, we did postpone. We did beg Ben off a little bit, or Sam, I should say. All right, so today's new P500 editions. We have 3 reprints, one for Banish the Snakes, one for Flashpoint South China Sea, and one for the Russian Campaign Deluxe 5th edition. Those are all great, and glad to see those are going to come back into print. And certainly, I feel like Russian Campaign should basically never be out of print, as somebody that has reasons to not prefer it over other games on the topic. I still think it is a classic that should remain available. Now, the 2 new things here are 1867 Big Wyoming, which I didn't even look at because I assume it to be an 18XX game, and I haven't played an 18XX game in eons. Although, when I have played them, I have enjoyed them. But it is simply not a priority for me, so I did a bit ignore that one. And then we have Lenin's Legacy, which is by Matthias Kreimer. And this is an interesting looking one because it is the Communist Party in the Soviet Union, and Lenin is no longer well. And there is a power struggle between Stalin and Trotsky. And this sounds absolutely fascinating. Can't wait to see this actually come out. And considering it's only been a few days and it's at 246 orders thus far, I think it is safe to assume that it will, in fact, make its number. So, we will get to Rebel Fury. It is 10 minutes in, man. We are so not yet on the topic. So, but anyway, this looks interesting, and it's got a kind of a cool cover. I would have called this Red Legacy personally, but I was not consulted, so that's fine. All right, so recent P500 editions. We have some discussion of the new P500 editions. I feel like, based on the hints that we get, that the GMT must have at least half a dozen 18xx games in the pipeline at some stage or another of development. And again, that's fine. I just don't really have the bandwidth to deal with 18xx games at the moment. You never know; that could possibly change, but it doesn't appear to be in danger of changing anytime soon. Well, more on Matthias Kramer's designs later as well. All right, so new P500s on the horizon. A shadowy hide-and-seek World War II game set in the South Pacific. No real idea what that might be. A battle game set in medieval Italy. That sounds potentially interesting, but we will see what that looks like. Something new in the GBACW series. Always delighted to see more GBACW, as we might gather from tonight's topic, and we'll be talking a fair amount about GBACW tonight as well. Another ACW multi-pack for your American Civil War wargamers. So, I am going to, and a deluxe GMT edition of a Hobby Classic strategic game. I don't know what that is, but if I hear about what that is, I probably would recognize it, because there's a number of such things in the pipeline. I'm going to pull this down and converse for a moment. So that fourth item, another ACW multi-pack for American Civil War wargamers. Here's what I'm hoping that is. I am hoping that is GMT's Glory series. They did 3 volumes of it. It's a Richard Berg design that I think is better regarded now than it was when it was available. There are 2 battles per box, so if we put the whole thing together, we would end up with 6 battles. That sounds like a pretty nice multi-pack to me. They are not all battles that we see a lot of, and that's going to be a theme tonight for Civil War battle games. Because, we don't have that many games on Fredericksburg, and there's reasons for that based on how that battle went down, but there's also some missed opportunity there, I think. That battle did not have to go away. Are we reporting this as news, or are we reporting this as what a great idea that Gary had? Because I would be fine with the latter, but I would prefer the former. So, now, that is a chit pull system, and the back of the box describes it as a unique chit pull system. And that may be because chit pull was a little more novel at the time. It was a little new, although it had been around for at least a decade at that point. But I don't know what unique features the chit pull system in the Glory system had. But Berg was known for liking chit pull systems. I mean, we have GBACW. We also have the Ancient World, which has a chit pull element to it. And there's at least several other examples as well. So Stigler has Glory 2 going. Chancellorsville, another one that we don't see very much of. All right, back to the GMT update, now that we have completed ranting about Glory. All right, coming events. Wargaming at AirCon 2023, which is in the UK. We have the Spring 24 weekend at the Warehouse Info. We have GMT East in Schenectady, New York in April. God, this stuff's coming up so fast. Game More 3, which is in Albany, Oregon, which, from what I understand, it is a great event, great wargame forward event. Here is a 10th International Twilight Struggle Convention in Kythera, Greece, which sounds like an awesome location. I'd have trouble going to a convention to just play Twilight Struggle, though, I gotta tell you. And we got some videos here from Hex Encountered on the Plum Island Horror. What else do we got? Vassal tournaments. Here's some stuff from Hannibal's Revenge. Looks nice. More learning materials from the Board Games Chronicle, which is doing a great job with that stuff. Not their P500 orders. Here is some stuff on Firefight Tactical. Inside GMT is articles supporting their games. I do like the cover for Red Dust Rebellion. I do feel like in some of these cases, I feel like the title itself is not prominent enough. Like on the Jest of Robin Hood, for example, I feel like that title's getting kind of eaten on this thumbnail, as opposed to Rebel Fury, which is like Rebel Fury. It really jumps at you. Not all of these are final covers either. A lot of them aren't. Anything that says P500 on it is probably not a final cover. So. Perfidious Albion, you're not alone here. I mean, there's certainly some ongoing threads within the Berg design corpus that kept repeating themselves, and I do think that to some extent he was reusing a lot of the same mechanics. So to say that it feels like a lighter GBACW, I think is, one shouldn't take that analogy too far, but I do think there's some truth to it too. Eric Goebel picked up River of Death this past weekend. That is, as far as I can tell, is the hardest GBACW game to find at the moment. I see Glory as being quite different from Rebel Fury, though, to be honest. Now, we'll see with Rebel Fury. Mark's working on Rebel Fury Volume 2 already, which also sounds good. Perfidious Albion says they should continue developing the Glory system. I'm going to talk about a bunch of the different American Civil War game systems representing battles that I am into tonight. So I don't have to commit myself to a single one. I'll be happy to buy them both. In any case, charging and shipping. As previously mentioned, France 40 and the mounted map, therefore, are shipping in early March and have been charged for, as is Rebel Fury. Next charges and shipments will be the Clash of Sovereigns / Clash of Monarchs mounted map and update kit for those who have ordered that. The For the People 4th printing is coming, and if anybody doesn't have or hasn't played For the People, unless you really hate card-driven games, which or point-to-point maps, which it is, both, it is a wonderful game that I highly recommend. So I would get this, and I will also say that the new box is 3 inches deep, which is great, and is extremely handsome. I like the old box, but this one's really gorgeous. There's also a reprint of Here I Stand and Washington's War coming. Now, beyond that, further at the printer, I can never remember how to say that, of Robin Hood, Bayonets and Tomahawk 2nd printing, I, Napoleon from Ted Racer, which looks pretty interesting, although I do hope they've managed to correct the spelling of Ted's name on the box. That's a little embarrassing. But that looks very intriguing. And Virgin Queen 2nd printing. Going to the printer late this month is the Downfall mounted map reprint, plus the 3-inch box for that. I have Downfall. I don't intend to procure the mounted map for it, since I don't need it. I'm fine with putting it under Plexi. Now, here's the new thing with the production outlook. Instead of the sort of 2 or 3 categories we had before, we've got more. So we've got some notion of how long it's going to take for this stuff to actually make it into the pipeline, right? Meaning that it has been sent to the printer. So the first batch of things that are in quote-unquote final art and proofing, and these are 1 to 2 months away from going to print, are Congress of Vienna, Labyrinth the Awakening 2nd printing, Labyrinth itself 5th printing, Next War Iran, which I might order, Red Dust Rebellion, Space Empires, all good things, plus the 5th printing, Close Encounters and Replicators, Talon 3rd printing, which you can integrate with Space Empires, and Wolfpack. I am also looking for, yes, so this is correct. Thunderbolt Deluxe will essentially have 3 full games in it, all of which reuse some of the same materials, like they're all on that Italy map, for example. You get an extra map for Africa in Volume 2, and in Volume 3, which is Thunderbolt proper, they would have introduced the Iberia map. If you're not into Ancients, that's cool, but if you are into Ancients, these are operational Ancients, which to me is like... is a kind of a bit of a holy grail, because we haven't really seen much of that. So, yeah, Thunderbolt Deluxe is going to be an impressive package. So, the next step down here is also in final art and proofing, and is 3 to 4 months away from going to print. which includes Fields of Fire Deluxe, the update kit, fighting formations for the 29th Infantry Division in the Shadows, which is about the French Resistance, Mr. President 2nd Edition, and the update kit for that, which is almost the entire game, to be honest, except the board. No Retreat, third printing, which is a game I bounced off of fairly hard. Seljuk, our very own friend of the channel, Just a Guards game. Very interesting looking that. Entry in the Levian campaign series. Skies Above the Reich, the Weimar Republic, which I'm going to have, I'm going to open that in a separate tab here because I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Zhang He, which I know I'm not pronouncing right. That's David Thompson and I think Jeff Engelstein's game on the Chinese Admiral. That is going to be a solitaire game and sounds pretty interesting. Now, in the art department, which I interpret this statement as meaning that it will go up into one of the prior two categories sometime in Q2, include Combat Commander Europe and the Med Master Edition. Remember, they're combining those two things. Plus the Minor Nations Battle Pack, plus Cross Bronx Expressway, which also sounds very interesting. The Cuba Libre I'm having talking trouble today. Calixto Bot update. Cuyus Regio, which I am super excited about. Hannibal's Revenge, Holland 44 second printing. That's a terrific Mark Simonich game. Hubris, that's Morgan Guyon-Reti, whose name I probably mangled. Her new game, that is about the successors to the Alexandrine Empire. That's probably going to be very interesting. Next War Taiwan, second edition. Some more No Retreat stuff. Our very own Stigler's by Swords and Bayonets has moved up. And Thunderbolt Deluxe. No sense in those going to the printer separately, right? So this does represent, the kind of a reset of the entire schedule from GMT, but also gives us some extra visibility and a little more idea of where in the pipeline some of this stuff is. So next down, we have in the art department, meaning ready for final art and proofing Q3, Q4. So what I, again, interpret that as these will be moving up to final art and proofing in Q3 or Q4. 1848, The Springtime of Nations, also a very interesting looking game. Baltic Empires, haven't really paid much attention to that. Army Group North, 1941 second edition. I think that does represent a moving up of this title that lots of us have been waiting for actual decades. Battles of the American Revolution, Tripec number 2. I'm up for that. China's War, which I had on pre-order and then I backed off of. It is a Brian Train coin game. Brian knows what he's doing. So I have some confidence in this, but I did cancel my order for it. I may back up on that and reorder. It won't be the first time. We have Comancheria second printing. We have Henry, which is another Levian campaign game about Henry V. Infernal Machine, which is about Civil War submarines. This is one that I was fully prepared to say, I don't know if that sounds... but it actually looks fairly interesting. Perfidious Albion, they may have, because the old one was around that long, and they may have printed Typhoon more than once too, but I don't know that any of that got called a second edition. None of the Barbarossa games have been, except for Army Group Center, which just got reprinted a couple years ago, have been in print anytime recently. Even Crimea has been gone out of print for several years. Continuing on, Red Winter Expanded. A lot of people like that game. Silent Victory, third printing. That's certainly solid. Tank Duel, Tank Pack. Battle for Normandy Deluxe. Great news on that. Battle for Sicily. Great news on that. The Bell of Treason, The Hunter's fourth printing. That is a terrific game. The Pure Land. That is a game about feudal Japan, I think. 3 Days of Gettysburg Deluxe, and a Triumvir, which I think is another Mark Herman and Jeff Engelstein game. And that sounds... I haven't ordered that, but it sounds interesting enough that I may end up ordering that. In the art department, so this stuff will not probably get sent to the printer before 2025. Includes John Butterfield's Away Team, which sounds very promising. Also sounds like a lot of design work. Bear Trap, which sounds intriguing. That's Soviets in Afghanistan. Decisive Action, Fields of Fire Volume 3, The Parachute Regiment. No Retreat 5, The Western Front. I feel like that's been kind of kicking around for a long time. And Normandy 44 Amount Map plus a 3-inch box. Now, So you've only heard about the Hundley because that was the only one that did anything. The rest of them sank with all hands aboard. So they did have at least 3 primitive submarines that the Confederacy did, that is, and several of them sank before the Hundley actually managed to go do something. All right, now this is another interesting addition to the way they're reporting this list. This is status uncertain. These are art department ready, but are stuck in terms of progress for whatever reason. These include 1833 NE and 18 EUS. Those are 2 18XX games. Commands and Colors Ancients, Epic Ancients Second Printing, Commands and Colors Le Grand Battles, which I know will enrage our friend Jim Ozarski. CNC Medieval Expansion 1. Cool that they're doing that. Although I don't have CNC Medieval. I've played it, but it wasn't... And I'll play it again, to be honest. But I didn't feel obliged to own it, considering the enormous amount of space that I'm eating with Commands and Colors already. Expansion or Extinction. Irons, which I think is the Space 4X version of Triumph and Tragedy, which, hey... I'm up for that. Iron Storm, Maneuver Third Printing, Guerrilla Generation, and Thunder Rally Crew Chief Expansion. So all that stuff is kind of wibbly-wobbly right now. Draft depth is actually a thing that hit with the Merrimack / Virginia as well. It was not super. It was simultaneously not seaworthy, and it had too deep a draft to be able to go very far upriver, which limited its ability to get stuff done. But it also was a significant threat while it was actually afloat. So we've got a bunch of content creators, including Dan and myself, and our friends at the Players Aid, and whoever has this cool Napoleon picture. I don't even know who that is, but it's a cool picture. And a bunch of other folks as well, so check all this out. We have cover art for Hubris. I think this cover art, let's back up a little bit on the zoom. I think this is pretty cool cover art. Here is the Space Empire's 5th printing. Oh, okay. So this is the Space Empire's 5th printing, new box art, and this box art is cool. So, okay, and here's some stuff for Next War Iran. Cool to see that. Here's a sample card from I, Napoleon. Here's some counter sheets from Red Dust Rebellion. Here's a little faction card. Sticker icons for Medieval Expansion. Here's some counter samples for Swords and Bayonets. Stigler, who's doing the counters for that? And here's in-progress cards for our away team. So that's cool. I would be shocked if away team wasn't tons and tons and tons of fun. So here's some updates from Tri-Pack number 2 for Battles of the American Revolution. This is a very popular series as well. So, hey, Stigler, they misspelled Ted Racer's name on the friggin' box, okay? So it could be worse if they misspelled Magruder. So, yeah, he didn't do it that way. Good old Prince John Magruder, who we got to see and play with in the week's activities. So here's the box cover for Congress of Vienna. Nice box cover. Anything else of interest here? Reprint tracking. Check that out if you want. And that's about it. So we now will pull that down and start segueing into actual topic, which would be cool. So the next thing, well, I guess we're not getting to the actual topic yet, because I've got to remind everybody that we in fact have slides from Winterfest last week. So let's show those first. It shouldn't take too long, but I'll have all kind of commentary while we're doing this. All right, so while stopped at a Ohio Turnpike service plaza to use the little man's room, I noticed that they had a poster commemorating Ohio's KIA troops in World War I. So I couldn't help but take a picture of this. This is pretty cool. Did I miss that for Serpents of the Seas? Yeah, there is one on P500, and I will totally grab that. I don't think this is the same Magruder. So here's another picture of that. So here we're actually at Winterfest. This is Pharsalis, Great Battles of History. We had a couple guys playing that. Big battle. Big, messy battle. And this took them about a day. I mean, they're kind of, fighting their way through the rules, trying to recollect games that they haven't played in a couple of years. So it took them about a day and a half to play through this, but they appear to have had a good time. Here is our map of On to Richmond 2. Pretty close to this original setup. Now, I didn't get a lot of pictures of On to Richmond 2 because the glare off the plexi was really quite bad. We actually will get to the topic as part of this little slideshow because we're going to have some Civil War battle action happening here in a minute. So here is one of four, believe it or not, four GTS games that were on tables at Winterfest, three of which were Race for Bastogne. The other one was the Devil's Cauldron. We'll see a picture or two of that along the way here. We, meaning our table, which was Doug from the Tabletop's Edge, and myself playing the Union, and another fella and Fucko playing the Confederates. And we called it on Thursday, and I'll get to that toward the end here. Here is Wilderness War. I'd actually like to try this. So the maps from any of the reprints from Multiman are completely redone. This is true of ASL stuff too. Completely redone from the Avalon Hill days because they don't have the digital maps available. But this was getting played. Here is Axis Empire's Ultimate Edition. This was technically a side game, but they packed up the Devil's Cauldron on about Wednesday, and they focused on this, and they got a good chunk of the way through it. And they were still playing this when I walked out the door on Saturday. I left probably at 9 a.m. That sounds approximately correct. And, oops, mixed them up. They were still playing this. So Wilderness War is on Rally the Troops. I think it is, yeah. We'll be doing that, but I have other stuff that's got to go on the wall first. So here is the big Devil's Cauldron map. Now this is 4 standard-sized maps, more or less, plus these 3 little extensions that you see over here that prevent it from fitting on my table unless I build an extension for it, which I might do. And yes, they are. It is all. The GCACW maps are all Charlie Kibler maps, except for the original Grant Take the Command maps, which were Rick Barber maps. But they were done in Charlie's style that he established for the series, rather than in the Rick Barber style. Super Chats should be on, yeah, I have no idea. No idea what's going on with that. If anybody else has problems with Super Chats or Super Stickers, please let me know. I don't know what's going on with that. I'm unaware of any problems. This is Next War Taiwan. They pounded at this. The Chinese didn't make a lot of headway. They hit the beaches and got massacred from there. I wouldn't go so far as to say bad, but maybe the colors aren't quite as punchy on to Richmond. But I think that's more true of Grant Takes Command than on to Richmond, thinking about it. Here is Unconditional Surrender, which a couple of guys were playing for several days, and Mark, thanks for stopping by, much appreciated. Be well. They echoed some of the problems that I had with Unconditional Surrender after a couple of days as well. This is GMT's Panzer. Apparently these guys were having fun with it, which is cool. I've never played this. It's probably good. Here is some action. Now, I'm going to now do the after-action report from On to Richmond 2. So the campaign allows the Union to start on one of 4 invasion sites, one of which is from, marching out of Fort Monroe, which is what they did historically at the tip of the Virginia Peninsula. One of which is landing at McClellan's original plan at Urbana on the Rappahannock. One of which is landing at Mobjack Bay, which we saw no sense in doing. And the fourth of which is landing upriver off the Rappahannock here at Tappahannock. And that's what we chose to do. And there were challenges that resulted from that decision. None of us had played the campaign before. Jeff Taylor says it was MBT rather than Panzer, so it's a related system at least. So there are supply challenges that will be accentuated more if you land at Urbana or Tappahannock, more so than if you land on the peninsula and can just march up the peninsula and build depots as you go. So we did have some issues, but that's not why we called the game either. So this is a lamp that I liked that somebody had, so I took a picture of it. Here's us doing on to Richmond 2, and this is pretty early in the game, maybe on the first day or so, something like that. No, we had a great time with it. Here's another race for Bastogne. This is Wings for the Baron, which is coming back from GMT from its original production from Victory Point Games, but this is the Victory Point Games version. And this looks actually neat. This is considerably neater than I thought it was going to be, and I may end up picking it up from GMT. I did, by the way, immediately regret not ordering from P500 Banish All Their Fears. And I have now procured Banish All Their Fears. So I'm not afraid to just buy this stuff. I really don't. Garrison Ven, not really, no. Things are... I felt like in the immediate aftermath of the news that we heard that things were very promising, and I feel less like that now, but I don't really have anything that I am that I feel comfortable passing on. Let me put it that way. But obviously, our thoughts and best wishes are with Dean and the other members of the community that are facing health challenges. Let's put it that way. I always want to pop the dice popper, and I'll tell you what. There's like a felt lining on the bottom of that thing. That fucker is wearing off on mine, and it has not been used that much. So apparently, super chats are working. Alistair, thank you so much for the super chat and the support. And you can get those on Amazon if you just look for dice rollers. You'll find it eventually. But yeah, no, I always want to push the thing like the Pop-O-Matic. Here's Pacific War, which is kind of neat, actually, because there was Pacific War on a table, and then Mark hopped into the show last week, and I was able to walk over to those guys and say, hey, Mark Herman says hi. So that was pretty cool. So I think if you are inclined toward prayer or whatever positive vibrations you'd like to send Dean's way, I am positive that they would be appreciated, and... you know, we all would like Dean to recover. Let me put it that way. These are not that loud, John. If you'd jump out the window at ASL Oktoberfest with all the glasses. Now these guys were they took a couple of breaks to play other smaller things, but they were basically pounding on the Guadalcanal campaign of Pacific War all week. So that was fantastic to see. Here's again for Salas after it has gotten somewhat messy. There's Death in the Trenches. Some folks were playing this, and this looks incredibly promising. This is I think Ben Madison, Wes Ermey game about World War I that looks like a much lighter implementation of some of the same ideas that are in Absolute Victory. Yes, Absolute Victory. However, my understanding is that this thing takes like 20 or 30 hours to play. And if that's accurate, I think that that is too long for the kind of game that this is. All right, so you may have seen some of the shorts that came out. At least one of them featured this. This is the custom-built on-site table for OCS Ostfront. And what this is they started in June of 1944, and this is basically the entire East Front in June of 1944. Obviously, in a game, they had 10, 12 people playing this thing. But obviously, progress was not incredibly rapid. But everybody, there was like no problems reaching anything because of the way this thing was laid out. Everybody could reach everything, and it was great. And Mac here is the dude sitting in this cockpit. That's like the best spot in the whole thing. You're right on top of everything that you're in charge of. So yeah, the entire East Front at 5 miles to the hex. Now this is a kind of a far future project. I do have an interview that I filmed with Tony and OCS Series Honcho Chip Saltzman. That'll be popping up either this week or next week. It's about a 20-minute interview talking about the stuff that's on the immediate horizon, plus other further future stuff. This is not Curtis's table, Pete. Thanks for stopping by. Curtis's table is a low table. It's actually a little lower than my desk here. I feel like it's about 28 inches high. That sounds about right. Don't quote me on the actual number. But it is also designed to break down and fit in the back of Curtis's Pinto or whatever the hell he's driving. Honda Civic. It's a small car, let me put it that way. And it's on wheels. It's kind of an awesome table. But no, this is something that was whacked together by Chuck and Mac and a couple other people on the first day. So, I do like the map for the Compass version of Death in the Trenches. Here's another shot of Axis Empire's Ultimate Edition. I'm not sure how far along they are. Looks like not too far at this particular time. This is the second OCS table. There were 3 OCS games total, one of which was kind of a small side game. They got about a turn and a half done a day, I think. That sounds about right. So it wasn't incredibly rapid progress, but obviously it's mid-1944. There was just an absurd density of troops on the map there. And they did cover the table with craft paper prior to putting the maps down on it, which I found intriguing and not something I would have even thought would be necessary. So this is the second large OCS game that was on a table, and this is the Hero City. This is the Army Group North Sector from September 1943 to April, I think, of 1944. This is the same period that is covered by the Third Winter, and when they are all out, you will be able to link and play together if you want. This, The Forgotten Battles, The Third Winter, and Crimea Conquest and Liberation. Forgotten Battles, I'll spoil you on the news. It'll come out in the interview. We expect, and Pete has announced this already, so this is not going to shock anybody. We expect Forgotten Battles to be put up for pre-order well before the end of the year. Shouldn't be too much longer for that. Hero City, they did crank out quite a few turns. So setup's not really Stigler. If you put a couple people on it, setup's gonna take a couple hours. It's not that bad. We set up Case Blue in 20 man hours with 4 people. Now that's 20 man hours sounds like a lot, but at 4 people it took us about 5 hours to do, and it's stupidly big. All right, this is I think the only copy that is actually in the wild. This is Danny Parker's The Last Gamble. This is a new edition and a substantial revision of his original design called Hitler's Last Gamble, which was released in the early 90s, I think, from 3W. That game had some issues, from what I understand. This new version has sought to address those issues, and it looks very interesting. This is probably my number one most anticipated thing from Compass specifically. And one of my most anticipated games for the whole year, to be honest. All right, so we got a couple pictures of that. This is something that probably the vast majority of you have not yet seen, because it not only is not out, this was the first public playtest where people other than the 3 people who are designing this thing have actually seen this thing. Is that on pre-order? If we're talking about The Last Gamble, yes, it is available for pre-order from Compass, and it should be out in late April or May. Was the latest news I have heard. So this is a game by 10K Games. It is called Symphony of Destruction, and it is Army Group North, basically for the whole time. Looks pretty interesting. The maps look terrific. This is, again, the first time actual human people that aren't the designers or otherwise involved with the actual project have touched it. So, they identified some things that they want to now revise, and they're going to come back, and we're going to hear from them again in a few months. Stay tuned for further info. Watch this space. This is I don't know if you can see Leningrad on the map or not, but it would be right up behind that whiskey glass in the upper corner. So here's another shot of Next War Taiwan. Here's another shot of Unconditional Surrender. This is another shot of the Devil's Cauldron. Terrific game. Here's a nice shot of Lee facing in one of the big battles that we had in King William County, right around King William Courthouse. Where Lee so in our campaign, historically, Lee replaces Joe Johnston after Seven Pines. Joe Johnston is seriously injured at Seven Pines, and he is replaced by Lee the following day. And then shortly after that, we get the 7 days battles where Lee attacks the Union or counterattacks the Union very aggressively, convincing McClellan that he is, in fact, outnumbers the Union enormously, which was not really the case. But there is more or less force parity in this theater during most of this campaign, by which I mean that there's approximately the same number of Union troops as Confederate troops. McClellan doesn't know that, but it is nevertheless the case. So Lee does a very Lee thing here and attacks Heinzelman and Keyes' corps very aggressively and gets bloodily repulsed at this time. The aggressive strategy would pay off later, as we will see. There's Rick and his other buddy, Rick, playing Last Blitzkrieg. Last Gamble, sorry. Last Blitzkrieg is another Bulge game by Dean Essig, actually, but it's a great game. But I'm really looking forward to this game, and I'm hoping this is going to be like the last Bulge game I buy, but we'll see. All right. So game number 2, John, I'm not even telling anybody about that yet because you're still working on game number 1, but their planned game number 2 is Poland 1939. So. Oh, yeah, that's true. So the 10K guys will have that. I'm not sure to what extent it will be a demo, but they will have stuff to show off at Origins. So Ken Coleman is learning GCACW right now, but it seems like you put them... Yes, I may have some pictures of that later on. We did, in fact, put the manpower fatigue markers, and after a while we started putting the fortification markers and supply markers off the map as well. Royce, thanks for stopping by. So the things I like a lot about Unconditional Surrender, I like the basic mechanic of it. I think that works really well. There are 2 things that I don't like about the game, one of which is the diplomacy system, which to me feels simultaneously wacky and yet on rails. And the second thing is that I feel like for the kind of game that it is, that I would prefer it to be a weekend-long game rather than a week-long game. And what I mean by that is I think for the kind of game that it is, it should be playable in about 15 to 20 hours, and the fact is it's about a 50-hour game. It does have many virtues that I do like. All right, Thomas Prowl says there was a wave of research about 20 years ago that suggested Lee actually did outnumber McClellan. Dave Powell has, yes, I'm sure Dave Powell, he's one of the people I would probably think has an opinion on that. And certainly in some of those battles, I think that is absolutely correct. And yet, some say like Malvern Hill, I think Lee might outnumber McClellan at Malvern Hill specifically. And yet it's all costly assaults, and Lee ends up losing the battle, but McClellan ends up retreating anyway. So, because it's, McClellan. All right, Tabletop's Edge. Yeah, so I did make unit displays. I will, hopefully, if I can find the right flags to use for the iconography, I will put these on BGG. So... Ken X or Ken 10. This is exactly what I'm trying to say. I think it takes longer to play than it should based on the kind of game that it is. I nevertheless think it's a very good game, and I'm very curious to see what Sal comes up with for like follow-up games, because I think those follow-up games may avoid the problem, both problems that I've just mentioned for Unconditional Surrender Europe. So, all right. It's really not a bad idea. It's up to you, but I didn't wear a mask here. There were a couple people wearing masks at Winterfest, and I get it. I don't really want to get sick either, and I'm feeling a little allergy irritation at the moment. Thomas Prowl says that sometimes you play the game, sometimes you play the man. Lee was really good at playing McClellan. If that is really obviously true in the Peninsula campaign particularly. Now, whether this was by Lee's design or whether Lee just happened to have acted in such a way as to trigger McClellan and yet another bout of timidity, this is absolutely right. And that's nowhere more obvious than it was in the Peninsula campaign. And Antietam, too, I suppose that's true. I think this is true, and in fact, the people playing wasted a bunch of time trying to manipulate the Italians, which I think it's entirely too easy to do in that game. So, but that's me. All right, so moving on. We've got more close-up of the counters and the map for Last Gamble. I am really impressed with this map. I'm trying to remember who did the map, and I don't want to say it if I'm wrong. Ivan Caceres? Am I getting that right? I might be. I think this is an amazing-looking map, to say the least. Thomas Pearl says they had a big COVID outbreak at Game On in Bellevue, Washington. That sucks. A bunch of people had it at Compass Expo in the fall, too. And that's a big part of the reason why I'm not going back, because I don't really want to bring COVID back home again for a third time. So, I agree. I've been trying to get him to do this for years, Stigler. All right, here we have Pursuit of Glory. I haven't played this. I'm sure it's fun. This is Liberty or Death, I think, right? Yeah, this is Liberty or Death. They had this on a table for an afternoon. This is one of the coin games that I like very much. I think on the American Revolution, obviously. I think it's got an interesting dimension to it as far as the four positions. I would not necessarily say it's one of my favorite coin games. It's not necessarily one of my favorite American Revolution games, but I also am not Mr. American Revolution either, so it's, take that for what it's worth. All right, here we have up around Hanover Junction. That's the that fork is the South Anna River and North Anna River, and the Union for a few days occupied this kind of line along the South Anna River, opposing Lee's army. Later on, I'm not sure how many pictures I have of it. This would not be it. This is Franklin's large corps marching to McClellan's relief. He did not make it. But there's a big fortified line of Magruder's division, Magruder's enormous division in GCACW terms, kind of all dug in here in this wildernessy type area in New Kent County. And there's a couple of battles fought here that Franklin wins, and Magruder pulls the rest of his troops back to the outskirts of Richmond, which they managed to do in like a couple of days. This is just another shot that it was a decent shot because, I was having trouble with glare. I took a picture of this just because I hadn't seen this before, and I'm like, oh, this sounds reasonably interesting. The Solo Wargaming Guide, I believe this is for miniatures, but anybody who's into that might want to look into this. No, not really. I think it's just bad luck, to be honest, but, I mean, I think Lee was obviously right here. A gazetteer. So what the game does have is, so there's 4 books in the new On to Richmond. There's the core rules, the series rules, and then there's a book for each campaign. And each book, I don't know if I'd call this a gazetteer, but each of the campaign books does have the game as history, which kind of walks you through a lot of the locations and action as it happened historically. So, well, I mean, there was a lot of this kind of talk at the time. Let me put it that way. I am analytically reluctant to draw these conclusions. This is a shot of Versailles 1919. I have played this before, although I didn't get a chance to play it here because GCACW has very little downtime. So by 8 or 9 p.m., I was pretty much wiped out and ready to go to bed. So that more or less happened most nights, and the late night gaming was untouched by me. But they did play Versailles a couple of times. This is a game that seems to now get played at Winterfest in the evenings at least once, basically every year. Here's a tray of beads that Jeff Taylor brought. This was a great color selection and everything. I like the blocks better, but it's beads, blocks, whatever. Well, we are talking about ACW at this point, and I did promise that, and we are only at 50. Holy shit, we're almost an hour in. On to Richmond, as Stigler points out, is pricey. That is absolutely an accurate statement, but as Doug points out, there is an absolutely enormous quantity of play value in that box. So bear that in mind. It is one of the variables. So Eric Goebel recently bought Hood Strikes North. That is the best entry point at this time, just based on the price. Beautiful maps. Check out Patrick's Tactics and Tutorials, obviously. I've done some tutorial content for GCECW as well. But my stuff is perfunctory and years old, and Patrick is still doing it all the time. So check him out. And if you want to watch my stuff, cool. Here's High Frontier. This is High Frontier for All, which is the latest edition. I suppose it streamlines what is a somewhat Baroque game, somewhat. But I haven't played this particular edition. I played the previous one. Here's Normandy 44, which was set up as a side game. Terrific game. Here is some shots of the annual double-blind flat-top game, which ran for about 2 days. 2 days of Winterfest, that is. We got through about 15 hours of gameplay in the game. Here is, I'm trying to remember where we were here. So you'll see here that we're getting to within about 10 miles of Richmond right now. This line of fortified regiments here is the Virginia militia manning breastworks in Richmond. One of the things that we did notice is that the things that are called forts in GCACW are really not forts in the fort sense. They are just really good breastworks. Flat top, there was a huge storm over Guadalcanal that the Japanese got caught in and slowed them way down, and we pounded them and sank several of their transports and a carrier. So at that point, the Japanese would have had to fight when we called it, the Japanese would have had to fight their way out of that, probably have lost another transport or two, and maybe their second carrier, and that would have been bad. John Stanley says, seems to have very complains on errata or rules issues. I'm not sure whether you're saying that nobody really is complaining or if there's tons of complaints. We had no real issues as far as that stuff goes. We did find at least 1 or 2 pieces of errata, which I think are things off the map that were just inherited from the Avalon Hill edition. Nothing particularly important, however. All right, so here's another one. You can see again just how quickly we're outside of Richmond here. So Bull Sumner's 2nd Corps manages to get himself between the Army of Northern Virginia and Richmond, and that does mean some scrambling on the part of everybody, and we actually make it to the gates of Richmond at one point, like the literal one hex. We're attacking into a Richmond city hex, And it did not work out for us, but we did get closer to Richmond than they did historically. So I was happy with that. Here's another shot of the 10K Symphony for Destruction. Again, these are like handmade counters. Bear that in mind. The map is not done yet either. All right. Calreese watched a couple of videos on GCACW from Just a Guard. I agree with this. I think this is generally good. I mean, for me, this advice works. It might not work for everybody. There is a lot, Joseph Groan, there is a lot of off-map stuff going on in Onto Richmond 2. This is generally the case to some extent with most GCACW campaign games, but it is especially the case here. You've got a Fredericksburg box with McDowell and his enormous first corps sitting up there. You've got Burnside's corps sitting on the South Carolina Islands waiting to get freed up. You've got Jackson in the Valley. You've got like a lot of off-map stuff that will come in sooner or later, and it's a long campaign, so it's 112 turns, as long as 112 turns. It can end after turn 91, but it can also play as long as 112 turns. And we got about 70 turns, 70, 75 turns, and something like that. I'm not really hearing much on this from the errata standpoint. I did watch Gilbert Collins' video on Banish All Their Fears, and he found that the setup was just too onerous. That's the impression, that was the takeaway I got from Gilbert's take on it. That is a thing I'm willing to probably deal with. So just FYI, we are talking about GCACW. GBACW is the battle game from GMT. And no, none of the skirmishers are standalone, if that's what you are asking. You need Stonewall Jackson's Way 2 to get the most out of skirmisher number 4, which is the recent one, and to play any of the actual content in it, and there's quite a bit. There's a big cavalry scenario and a whole mini campaign, but you need Stonewall Jackson's Way, at least Stonewall Jackson's Way, I suppose. You might be able to get away with the Avalon Hill version. I haven't thought about that, though. But you really want Stonewall Jackson's Way 2 to go with Skirmisher number 4. Skirmisher number 3 is basically just a magazine. There's not really any, there's no counters or anything like that with it. It was kind of a, hey, we're reviving the Skirmisher, and everybody was thrilled. And 1 and 2 are, I think, too pricey for most people to go after on the secondary market. However, that said, there are 2 mini modules in Skirmisher number 2, one of which is Rebels in the White House, which is Jubal Early's 1864 raid on Washington. And it is worthwhile, but it is also in Roads to Gettysburg 2. So if you have that, you don't need Skirmisher number 2. The other mini-module in Skirmisher 2 is Burnside Takes Command, which is the Fredericksburg campaign, which actually clipped because I got tired of the counters laying around when I got back from Winterfest. And that module actually goes along with Stonewall's Last Battle, so which is one that has not been redone by Multiman. So if you have the game on Chancellorsville or the Chancellorsville campaign, and I do, you can stick your Burnside Takes Command stuff in that. Oh, man, don't even tell me about the dice rolling. Whoa, we got some bad dice rolling over there. Old Skirmishers are, to my knowledge, not available on Wargame Vault. This is correct, though. All you do need is the map. And you can get copies of the old Avalon Hill versions pretty easily. Templestops Edge says the Confederates transferred most of the Norfolk garrison to the map. We did make a couple of assaults. We did eventually capture Norfolk, which also scuttles the Virginia, by the way. Not to my knowledge. So Hood Strikes North came out at roughly the same time, within a 12-month radius or so, as Hood Strikes North. There's no extra, to the best of my recollection, there's no extra scenarios in Skirmisher number 3. There's just articles, and there's a new streamlined campaign system for Atlanta is Ours. If you feel like if you have Atlanta is Ours and you feel like the campaign system is too heavy or too confusing, you should have Skirmisher number 3 because it can replace that for you. As far as I know, the Skirmishers are not available. I'd like to see them be. Okay, Joe Mentum says, Banish All Their Fears has no more consequential errata than a normal game and isn't that hard to set up. The rulebook is too concise and could use some clarifications. I'm prepared to believe that, but I haven't really looked at the rulebook yet, to be honest. I just got it the other day. All right, Skirmisher number 3, says Kyle Harris, is focused on Atlanta is Ours and has the long roads to Gettysburg. So the rules for Long Roads to Gettysburg, which is just basically a much earlier campaign start for the Gettysburg campaign, is on Multiman's GCACW support website. And while there is an article on Long Roads to Gettysburg in Skirmisher 3, the whole campaign rules are not in there. All right, here is, where are we here exactly? You can see some interesting landmarks here. You know, Bethlehem Church, something else that was interesting is on here as well. You can see this is Richmond, and we are at this point 3 miles from Richmond. And same 3 miles from Richmond here. We're now getting into the, you know, the few good shots I got. So everybody's asking what these little hexagonal things are, and what they are clouds, and when there is overlap between the clouds, you have a storm. And they are held above the map by those little things that come in the pizza box that keep your pizza from getting sat on. Once again, we have The Last Gamble here, more Last Gamble. This is a game of, this is the 10K guys with the with Symphony for Destruction, playtesting with new people for the first time. There's more double blind flat top. If there's multiple pictures of flat top, it's because there's 3 boards of flat top set up for this. Here's a closer look at their counters. Again, these aren't final art counters, so don't get too bunched up about that. More of these, more close-ups of the Last Gamble counters. I think they're pretty nice. Here is a close-up from the Hero City map. These are playtest counters too, I will point out. Or is this from... This might be from Baltic Gap. There was a scenario of Baltic Gap's set up. This is one of the games of Race for Bastogne. This is from Hero City. You could tell these are playtest counters. More Hero City, and is that it? Nope. More Hero City. More Hero City. I got some Hero City pictures. And then here's another long shot of the 10-foot long or 12-foot long table for Ostfront. And again, when this comes out, which is a ways away, it's going to be multiple games that you can then put together if you want, or play them individually. Hexy, thanks for stopping by. Here's another shot of that. You can see in the background, that's Hero Cities, that next table down. You can see the craft paper that they used as well. Here's Race for Bastogne. Here's more Race for Bastogne. Here is one of the OCS games. This must be the big Ostfront game. More OCS. I got plenty of pictures of this. This is the Ostfront game. You can see that sort of southern area that we haven't seen a lot of action from. Here's a couple of guys hovering over Hero City. They got good progress done on that. Another shot of the Leningrad area and points south from Hero City. And here's a shot of the whole room kind of facing from the back of the room out, although there's another 2 or 3 tables behind me where I'm taking this picture. This is Sky Galleons of Mars, which we had as one late night thing, which is a pretty cool game, actually. Was that the last of the pictures? I think that was the last of the pictures. So, let's pull that down. And now would be a great time to take a quick break and thank our sponsor, Noble Knight Games, the official sponsor of the Counterclipping Show. So take it away, Noble Knight.
Here at Noble Knight Games, we've been carefully growing the world's largest selection of board games, role-playing games and dice, war games, miniatures and paints, card games, and more, going on 25 years now. Our rustic castle contains more game and hobby goodness than you can shake a stick at, complete with careful packaging and the finest customer service the land can provide. You can buy, sell, trade from anywhere in the world, just like nature intended. Noble Knight Games.
All right, so once again, thank you to Noble Knight Games. And once again, also, you can help out the channel by just buying the stuff you were going to buy anyway through the affiliate link in the video description. I get a little kickback in the form of store credit for anybody that buys stuff through that affiliate link. And we will eventually have enough to procure for ourselves a copy of Campaign for North Africa. And I will then, at some point afterwards, bring you content on Campaign for North Africa. Even if it is a 2-minute video of me crying over Campaign for North Africa, because I can't figure it out. That might be what you see. But we will see what happens. So once again, thank you, Noble Knight. All right, so Civil War battles, right? There's a lot of... American Civil War is one of our more popular topics, although, you know, kind of everybody else, topic-wise, is playing second fiddle to World War II. But American Civil War is a respectable number of games coming out each and every year, and a good number of them are tactical games or battle games, which is kind of where I was going with the description of battle games. So what battles do we want to see games on that we don't see a lot of games on? I have already mentioned Fredericksburg. That is a battle I would like to see more of, and I do think it is a little more interesting, because you know how the battle went. It's a little more interesting to kind of take a scale step back and allow some of the maneuver that didn't work out the way it was supposed to have worked out according to Burnside's plan, and which resulted in costly frontal assaults. In general, Western battles, let me be specific about this, because Perfidious Albion mentions battles in the West, and in general, this is not a problem with war games covering the American Civil War necessarily. It's about the larger trends in historiography for most of the last 150 years until relatively recently covering the American Civil War. Have tended to place a huge focus on the big battles that take place in the Eastern Theater, which is basically Virginia, now West Virginia included. Maryland and Pennsylvania is basically the Eastern Theater, and maybe parts of North Carolina. And everything else is Western Theater or Lower Seaboard Theater or Trans-Mississippi Theater. And we have generally, John Madison, thanks for stopping by. We have generally not seen nearly as much on Western Theater battles, let alone Lower Seaboard Theater battles. And there are some interesting ones. As we have for the big Eastern Theater battles, specifically Gettysburg, but we've also seen a good number of games on Antietam as well. You know, quads are cool. I'll be happy to do quads. Red River. So there is there's no GCACW treatment of Red River, but there is a GBACW treatment of Red River in an old S&T magazine. Now, this is going to be old GBACW, not new GBACW, as in the Chitpole version of the game, but you do have that. Now, I think that both correct me if I'm wrong here, both Chancellorsville and Fredericksburg will be in Rebel Fury, if I'm not, which ought to be out any time. And those are interesting battles. Chancellorsville, I think, is a perfectly viable battle, and we yet have relatively few games on it. Fredericksburg is a little more understandable as to why we have fewer games on it, because people see it as this battle in which Burnside, undertakes a large number of extremely costly assaults, and none of that actually works out very well at all. And that sounds like it's not going to make a great game. But, in the maneuvering leading up to Fredericksburg, there is all kinds of opportunities for different stuff to happen that might radically alter that situation that resulted in a bunch of Fredericksburg assaults, as we saw historically. So I think there's a good opportunity there for Fredericksburg and Chancellorsville. And in both cases, they are battles that we have not seen a lot of action in. Now, every, if we're talking about series games, every ACW series is going to have to deal with Gettysburg somehow sooner or later, and we'll get to that. But first, thank you, John Stanley. News alert, Bronner's Farm. August 28th, 1862 will be done by Revolution Games. Is this Blind Swords? Because if so, awesome. And Blind Swords is doing some really interesting stuff. I am now officially 3 games behind on Blind Swords. The last 3 I don't have. I'm going to need to fix that, but I am not able to fix it quite yet. So, I like the Blind Swords system. I think it, for me, represents kind of the ideal light Civil War tactical system. It is at the regimental scale. Matt Davidson, Burnside's original plan was not bad, but the boats didn't show up, which was another problem that we had in our campaign, was the boats never showed up. So we have sent sternly worded letters of reprimand to Gideon Wells, Secretary of the Navy. But the boats, we had just a hell of a time getting people on boats. I will agree with this statement that deserves further exploration, Chad Kennedy, that Vicksburg is as important as Gettysburg, and furthermore happens at basically the same time. So once again, thank you, John Stanley, for the support. It is much appreciated. The Tabletop's Edge says that Meade at Fredericksburg broke through on the Union right, but his division was unsupported. Right! Could have been a different story if his corps commander exploits his initial gains. Right! Exactly. So, let's see here. I'm confused. I really need to get this entire game into half a counter tray, just based on the what else is going in this counter tray, which is Longstreet attacks. So we're going to have to double some guys up. And Dorsey Pender is unreasonable. So I actually picked this up at Compass Expo, and this looks intriguing. It is a John Paniski design, and I think it's got a Rick Barber map, if I'm not mistaken. So it also looks very pretty as well. This is a good call. Although I'm not exactly the most patient fella on the internet. There's no doubt about that. Perryville. So one of the recent, I agree with this. I've got 2 games on P Ridge personally. I've got the Blind Swords P Ridge, which I've played, in which there's playthrough content on the channel. And I've got the old S&T, not S&T, but the old that P Ridge, the old GBACW P Ridge. Now I think there's some new ones coming, which would be great. Although I have no actual actionable information on that at this time. I guess we'll put these in here. Trying to figure out where the actual chits for the chit pull are going to go here. These counters are 5/8 inch counters, so they're a little hard to fit in GMT counter trays, especially not with my the tray dividers. That'll have to do. That works. I got all the Confederates in without too much trouble. Let's see how the Union goes. All right. So Rob Moffat says that Blind Swords is a tremendous series. Tabletop's Edge corrects to Union left. Yeah, I want to try this. Belmont's not an enormous battle, but it's an early Grant battle, which by itself makes it fairly interesting. Okay, John Stanley suggests struggle to control occupied Confederate areas such as John Mosby in Northern Virginia. This is interesting. I mean, there's a number of these areas. The obvious one is Missouri. There's substantial Missouri leading up to the Civil War and continuing through the Civil War. Missouri is a giant mess. So there's not a lot of games on that, but that's not surprising, particularly since a lot of it's a guerrilla actions, and war games have historically been not awesome at handling that type of conflict. Let's put it that way. Because it doesn't lend itself to direct numerical modeling, which is the typical expectation for war games, whether that's a good thing or not. That is, in fact, the expectation. All right, so, happy to pick up whatever additional material they would like to do for GBACW. So, Stigler, what is the mystery GBACW project coming that they teased in this month's update? Is that the Wilderness? Because that's what seemed closest that's not already on P500. Grand Havoc is one of the recent Blind Swords entries from Revolution Games. So Blind Swords is interesting, and I think a little confusing, because the game system is not confusing. It's just kind of how it's sold is confusing, because it is from multiple publishers that have done games in the series. Now, at least 4 publishers, and Blind Swords proper, right? We're not counting Shattered Union, which is a fork-off, which is a streamlined fork-off of Blind Swords, or Black Swan, which is a somewhat rescaled version of Blind Swords that's meant to accommodate larger battles than the game system is necessarily comfortable with, but that's just as much a facet of the publishers, right? Revolution Games is not going to do a regimental scale Gettysburg game with 5/8 inch counters and a 10 square foot map, right? They're just not. That's not what they do. So that's why we got the Most Fearful Sacrifice to do Gettysburg, where it's like half a scale step up. They're basically demi-brigades are the units. Like, some of them represent individual regiments, and some of them represent multiple regiments that happen to have fought together in the actual battle. So, and then that's kind of the solution for doing... Who's this guy? I guess he's just an independent sharpshooters, maybe? Yeah, it looks like they are sharpshooters. I am not... P Ridge is part of Battle Hymn. That is actually true. Now, I haven't played Battle Hymn. What I have played is Gettysburg The Tide Turns, which is the digital implementation of Gettysburg that later appeared in Battle Hymn. Even the map is the same, and it is a very attractive game. Plays very well. I like the digital version a lot. It's available through Steam. Thomas asks about hypothetical games like Mine Run. I am not a huge fan of hypotheticals. It does depend, as far as, I might be more tempted by hypothetical. I think that part of the reason why I am wary of hypothetical war games is because I lean towards and play more bigger games that will take a substantial investment in time and space to play, and I don't feel like undertaking that level of effort for most hypothetical games. I could probably come up with an exception or two, and if somebody, so there's like hypothetical GCACW scenarios, which I wouldn't balk at playing at all, but we're not talking about a week-long commitment. We're talking about 3 to 5 hours maybe, right? Stigler says he'd really love to see P Ridge done in modern GBACW. Well, get on it, man. What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for the P Ridge Ferry to just get it done for you? Do it. There is a mini module in Skirmisher number 4, as Kyle Harris is pointing out here, called Lee's Last Offensive, that does cover the Mine Run and Bristow Station campaign, but GCACW is not a battles game. In fact, one of the points of GCACW is to show you how difficult it is to get the battles to actually happen. In the way that you wanted them to happen. Because you can come up with a plan, and it's an awesome plan, and if the execution falls over, as did many times historically, right? Some of the examples from Fredericksburg that we've talked about in this chat today would be examples of that, where, yeah, Meade should have gotten some backup, and it just didn't happen. So, E4 Airman hopes that the MMP's Vicksburg does justice to Grant. Yeah, so Vicksburg is it is a siege, which is the kind of thing that maybe GCACW is not good at out of the box, but there are also a bunch of battles that take place in the vicinity as well while the siege is taking place. So it will be, I think, a very interesting campaign to see. People have been asking for Vicksburg and GCACW for years. Steve-O mentions Grand Havoc from Revolution, which is the Battle of Perryville, and it is designed by Jeff Grossman. That is true. Five Forks, I want to say there's been at least one, but it's hard to think of what that might be. There is a game called Mosby's Raiders about, oddly enough, Mosby's Raiders from Victory Games. I haven't played it or particularly looked at it. Stigler said, this is not a confirmation, of course, but Stigler suspects the Wilderness as well. And, that's going to be a day one Insta order for me. Who am I kidding? I'll be happy to buy whatever they'd like to do at this point. So what I'm basically keeping up with, despite being 3 games behind on Blind Swords is on my list of supported, in the sense of supported by me, right? Because I'm supporting them. Civil War Tactical Series or rule sets. The others are Line of Battle, which we appear to be in no danger of getting anything on anytime soon, and GBACW. And then I'm kind of picking oddball stuff up here and there. There was an old Berg series called the Battles and Leaders series, which was, I think there were 4 games in the series, a couple of which were self-published by Conflict Simulations or whatever Berg's own publishing house was called. And then there's another game in that series called Chancellorsville Pinnacle of Victory, which I think might be the only game I have on Chancellorsville, the battle, which is why I picked, well, there's 2 reasons I picked it up. One, it's on Chancellorsville. It's a Berg design, so that to me makes it interesting. And it was also cheap. It was like $20, so I could not say no at that price. I guess if he's still here, I don't know if he's still here or not, want to give Fucko a shout out. I got some money for this, but he did supply me with the last piece that I actually wanted of Europa, which was Fall of France. I gotta get it for a pretty good price when all is said and done. So I'm happy to have added that to the library. I'm not going to play that though because I think that is not a strong entry in that series. All right, Kyle Harris says that GCACW excels at campaigns of maneuver that may or may not have ended in a battle. I would love Taloma, actually. I think that is a great idea because it is a campaign of maneuver where, I mean, admittedly, outwitting Braxton Bragg is not exactly something that you should put in your obituary. Brian, thank you so much for joining the channel as a patron. Very much appreciated. Thank you. Hexy, who has done some playtesting on GBACW Wilderness, says it's a head scratcher. Yeah, I hope that head scratcher in a good way. Taloma is not covered in Battle Above the Clouds. That is Chickamauga and Chattanooga. And, the other associated things with those campaigns. Unfortunately, Taloma is not in there. And recognize that Battle Above the Clouds was like the first new GBACW game to be released in many years at the time. And they were not yet kind of operating in the mode of we are going to do these like massive, expensive packages that have, 2 and 3, basically games in the box. So that's why I think Taloma's not in Battle Above the Clouds, but it is not. So there's tons of games on Antietam. Just the stuff that I've got and or have played. We first of all have the obvious thing to mention is Here Come the Rebels, which is the old Avalon Hill GCACW entry on the Antietam campaign. But it is revised and included in Roads to Gettysburg 2 from Multi-Man. That's the Antietam campaign, okay? And I've played several of the scenarios out of that. I actually played the campaign as well, but I'm not sure I would count it because other people were handling the campaign aspects of the time because it was getting played at Winter Offensive. I played None But Heroes from Line of Battle, which was a great experience. I have, but have not yet played, A Gleam of Bayonets from TSR. I'm aware that a new GBACW Antietam is somewhere in the pipeline. Wasn't Dixie a hypothetical Second American Civil War, though? Because if so, I don't think that actually counts. Cloyd's Mountain. There's a whole bunch. Rich Mountain hasn't been done. Cheat Mountain hasn't been done. That's just off the top of my head. So there's a whole bunch of mountain battles that hit. The Philippi Races. I don't know if you could make a good game out of that, thinking about it. But, it's something. Real small. Stigler says Antietam's probably a couple years away, which is great. Robert Maxey, thanks for stopping by. New Mexico battles. I don't think we're ever going to see a GCACW campaign out in New Mexico, but certainly you've got, what's that big battle that happens out there? Glorieta Pass. It's a pretty big battle. There's at least 1 or 2 games on that, but not a lot. There is a Pipe Creek Plan scenario in Roads to Gettysburg, or at least in Roads to Gettysburg 2, of what if Lee listens to Longstreet and they go with the Pipe Creek Plan instead of the plan that they executed. This is true. I feel like to some extent, folks, I'm not necessarily saying that Molotov Cockatiel is doing this, but I do feel like this conversation kind of goes past each other without making any contact all too often. But yes, after setup, and sometimes during setup, everything becomes hypothetical. That is absolutely correct. And we just have to be okay with that. I brought Stephen Sears' book, Gates of Richmond, with me to Winterfest to use as reading material, but then we had already previously decided to invade at Toloma, or at Tappahannock, and therefore the historical account of the Peninsula Campaign was of little use to me. We are now getting behind. Yes, I vaguely remember this. There was an old S&T Valverde. Kevin Featherly asks Herman Lettman, what is association with blind swords? Well, I think we talked to Herman about this too in an interview at some point, and Claude and like several other people are doing a really nice job supporting blind swords from Revolution with additional battles, and I think they're doing. I don't know if there's like a governing committee or who's making the calls, but I do feel like they're doing a good job bringing us battles that we haven't necessarily seen a ton on. So, for example, there's a game, one of the new ones is Chickasaw Bayou. I'm not sure I've ever seen a game on that. One of the other new ones is Salem Church, which is a part of the battle at Fredericksburg. And again, we haven't seen a whole lot in Fredericksburg. So whoever's making the calls on blind swords over at Revolution, I'm very happy with the decisions that they're making. Eric Hansen, I have an opinion on everything. I have actually played some of this, and in fact, there are some videos on either Antietam or Shiloh or both from a few years ago. I think the system is actually quite good. It is a very light system, so just bear that in mind if that's what you're in the hunt for. You're not going to get things like facing or ammunition or any of that. But you are going to get steps, and a lot of them. I did like the Shiloh game considerably better than the Antietam game, because the Antietam game had magical hexes, by which I mean hexes that are objective hexes that you will need to fight over in the game only because those were where heavy fighting historically took place, and the game does not naturally lead you to conduct fighting in those places. They're just the places that give you the points, and I don't like that as just a design thing. That's not a critical flaw. It's a preference. I had better vibes on the Shiloh game. Now, since then, there have been 2 additional games that have been released in that series. One of which is 7 Days Battles, which we could talk about. Another of which is Gettysburg, which they kickstarted, and which, if it's not out yet, it will be out like any time. GMT's 1863. This is one of those Battles and Leaders series from Richard Berg, actually, and wasn't sure what was in it, but that's interesting to know if Mine Run is in that. No. So the problem with Vicksburg is it's a siege, right? And sieges, unless you have a game system that's designed for sieges, what you end up with is a relatively boring game, right? Now, in the case of the operational game, there's a lot of maneuver around Vicksburg that happens, right? Which it does include some battles. If this, let me know how annoying the popping of this clicker is, because I feel like it's given me better corners than the other one. But I know it's noisy, too. Christopher Smith, GCACW Vicksburg is going to be called Thunder on the Mississippi, which is just a great title. And it is the next game in the pipeline for GCACW. I don't know if it is going to be on pre-order this year or not, however. Eric Goebel, we haven't talked about War for the Union by Compass or U.S. Civil War by... They are both... Oh, I don't know about War for the Union. I just picked it up at Compass Expo. It looks like it... And I watched some commentary on it, and it looks like a game that I will not prefer to either Victory Games Civil War or the GMT U.S. Civil War, but it also looks like it's got some fairly interesting ideas on its own in it, which is why I picked it up. They are both cool-looking games, but neither of them are battle games, and so they are beyond the scope of our conversation tonight. Not that we're necessarily beholden to that, right? As mentioned, the Worthington system is called the Civil War Brigade Battle Series. And, with the caveat that it is a very light game, and if that's what you are looking, with very nice physical components, and if that's what you're looking for, then you should check it out. My personal leaning is for battle games is more into Line of Battle GBACW, but I'm also very happy with Blind Swords. So there you go. Stepping into Hell, sure. I've already said this. Admittedly, Stigler said this 11 minutes ago, but yeah, this might be terrible. And I'll give it a look, and if it's a turd, then it will turn into Kindling, or maybe I'll sell it back to Noble Knight or something. Who knows? Tragic map. I haven't even laid the map out yet. It was, in my defense, it was inexpensive, okay? Hexy is giving away his Worthington ACW games. Now, if you're somebody that is going to want the extra detail of a Line of Battle or GBACW, then the Worthington games are probably not going to be your bag. But if you found Blind Swords maybe a little too fiddly, then I would suggest giving those Worthington titles a look. John Longshore had an ancestor at Vicksburg. That's very interesting. Back when everybody used to name their kids after the president. That was a weird time. All right. There was a third P. Ridge game in the Battle Hymn Dual Pack. What do you mean, third P. Ridge game? It's the P. Ridge game in the Battle Hymn Pack, which is Gettysburg and P. Ridge. More battle scale coverage of the Overland campaigns. Yeah, so fortunately, we're going to see... Well, the next Line of Battle game is the Wilderness. The next, or somewhere in the pipeline, is a GBACW Battle of the Wilderness. There's not a lot on that right now. One of the old Blue and Gray battles, I think, one of the old blue and gray quads covered it, if I'm remembering correctly. But I think those are another place I would point somebody if they were just like, if they found blind swords, for example, too fiddly, which is, not my feeling at all, but somebody might, and I might point them at those blue and gray quads from S&T, at least one of which was republished by TSR, so they're easy to get. But I think you can do better than blue and gray quad here in 2024. Let me put it that way. I've heard really good things about the Glory series too, so I've actually put them on a wish list somewhere, and I might actually punch those out. Now, I have also looked, I've never owned any of them, but I've glanced at that Napoleonic Glory, Triumph and Glory system from Berg that originally came out from GMT, and I think they did 2 or 3 games in the series. There's a Borodino game, and there was another one with a couple of battles in it, and then that series system got picked up by Frederic Bay in France and is now evolved into Jour de Gloire, which covers a lot of Napoleonic battles, but they are a little hard to get here in the US, let me put it that way. John Vasilikos, along with the Gettysburg game, I feel like I'm missing part of the comment here, so I apologize for that. So, after Thunder, GCACW news, this is all talked about in Skirmisher number 4. After Thunder on the Mississippi, the Vicksburg game, the next thing in line for GCACW will be Stonewall in the Valley 2. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the title or not. I think they should call it Thunder in the Valley, because it will not only contain Jackson's 1862 campaign in the Valley, it will contain Sheridan's 1864 campaign in the Valley, and there's miscellaneous action that happens in the Valley at other times as well, which it might also cover. So it's going to be another large combo pack. Joseph Groen says, Gleba Bayonets has an interesting McClellan indecision rule mechanism. It's kind of built into None But Heroes, though, right, with the order system. So, all right, James Murphy, Steve O says, James Murphy did Sharpsburg back in 1978. Only 2 games in his tactical series, but he was killed by a drunk driver. That's tragic. Not familiar with this game. Well, unplayable, I don't know. I mean, it's not the least hard to get Spitzer title, let me put it that way. That said, I agree with Stigler here. I'm sure the new version will end up being better. I'd be shocked by that. And Roger M says, ask it by that Sharpsburg by James Murphy. Now, how drunk am I, man? I don't feel that drunk. Vince Ree, yes. It's because I'm using this. That's why. I got the other one here as well. This one's way quieter. You can tell I'm actually not clipping anymore for this reason. Now we only have about 20 more minutes. I'm not talking for a reason. Can you hear the clipping? That was a whole counter. Here's another whole counter. Now let me clip one with this, and you'll notice the difference. Vastly different. So yes, that's why. I feel like this 2.5 millimeter clipper is in need of sharpening or something. All right, so Manders points out that Spotsylvania will be in Rebel Fury. Yes, it will be. Like to see regimental battle. Well, it's not going to be regimental. I would too, but I see the value in a higher scale game that covers everything at, say, the brigade or even the divisional level, that will give me some illumination on the topic, even if it's not necessarily a giant project to play. So, Chickasaw Bayou is in the GBACW pipeline. Yeah, get that moving too. That sounds like it's going to be something that gets bundled with. Is this in Louisiana? That sounds right. Louisiana or Mississippi, maybe. or maybe even Arkansas. I forget. It's in a swamp. That's all I know. Kyle Harris asks if there's a tactical level battle in the Overland campaign that is interesting other than the Wilderness and North Anna. Probably be some debate on whether North Anna is interesting or not. I'm thinking of Chancellor. I think I said Fredericksburg. Salem Church is part of Chancellorsville. So Stigler says the entire Mississippi campaign is due for exploration in GBACW. There you go. That'll be great. Be happy to look at that. As Thomas Prowl points out, Sieges can be good games. You just have to design it around that, right? Siege of Jerusalem is kind of a perennial favorite by for a lot of folks. Another example would be the old Avalon Hill Elysia game, which is a little bit different than, say, Siege of Jerusalem, but it is a siege nonetheless. I normally use this clipper on the stream for noise reasons, but right now on these particular counters, this one's giving me better results. It does vary a little bit by the material too. The old SPI counters are on kind of a, I don't know if they were like this or if they're just like this because they're 50 years old, are on a material that's kind of soft. And so they tend to clip cleaner with this thing than they do with this thing. I'm almost done with the entire sheet. So Eric Schaefer, thanks for stopping by. Molotov Cockatiel's hypothetical conflict was in response to me talking about the time investment. He's wondering how close to history some of those big games are for future. Anyway, probably not very, but they are starting with historical parameters. So if one considers this to be sort of a divergent equation, I guess, where unless it's like super on rails, which is generally considered to be an undesirable thing in Wargame, if you're just gonna replay the historical campaign, but you are going to diverge a bit from history basically as soon as you start play, and as you continue to play, you'll diverge a bit more and a bit more and a bit more and a bit more, and at some point you may end up with something that looks somewhat historical or completely ahistorical. And it's just a matter of exactly when you hit that point, right? So, the Clipper sounds like victory. I haven't thought of it that way. I do think I'd like to see more Siege games, to be honest, because there's some really interesting Sieges. So, the microphone is going to pick up what the microphone picks up, so I can't really I can't make that adjustment on the fly, let me put it that way. All right, so Eric Hansen says he likes GBACW, but looking for something lighter because the gaming buddies don't play that. So there is a GBACW Lite, whatever it's going to be called, in the pipeline somewhere. I would not personally hold my breath waiting for that, because I don't know what that's going to look like. I would say, between what's available now, I'd take a look at Blind Swords. It's much lighter without necessarily being as light as, say, the Worthington games. All right, so Steve O says they had Sharpsburg back in the day. Sold it for 100, and it's highly detailed. Good call. Bloody Road South. So they, I was almost going to clip a Gamer's CWB game tonight, and I just didn't. None of them jumped out at me to the extent that Cedar Mountain here did. The CWB series, I've never played that series. I've played Line of Battle, which is a Descendant series, but it's not the same either, and nor is it the same scale. So I definitely want to actually experience CWB at some point. I don't know how soon that is going to happen. I have 4 or 5 of them at this point, and I don't really want to buy more without playing it, because there's and it's another series where they did a lot of games that have not had a lot of coverage, like Gaines Mill and Champion Hill and North Anna River. So Carl says they're trying. Carl, thanks for stopping by. Trying to get No Turning Back on the Wilderness on pre-order. That would be great. I'm going to instant order it when it becomes available. I just don't know when that will be. It is up to the wizard that we call Brian. All right, so I try on the French, and I did take French in high school, so I wasn't good at it. And this is high school French, and it was like 35 years ago. But I do make a little bit of an effort with French names. All right, so Perfidious Albion points out that the vast majority of the Frederick Bay Days of Glory games are from the magazine requiring craft work. So the magazine in question is Vevictus magazine, and for a long time, I actually shouldn't put it that way. At one point, the magazine counters in Vevictus games were not what we here in the United States would call mounted. They were instead on a thin cardstock. So, and that I think is the craft work that is being referred to. Kevin Featherly says the Borodino Berg game has been played, and says the White Dog games Borodino, which I have not looked at all, is pretty good too. Perfidious Albion mentions Days of Glory. Yeah. So, well, I've got five clippers. Okay, I've got 3 non-deluxe and 2 deluxe. And there's a reason I have what I have. Sometimes on specific games, certain games, a given clipper is not giving me the results that I want. Let me actually try something slightly different. 2mm. I've been using 2.5 all day. Now, these are 5/8 inch counters, so I feel like I'm going to get a little too lean of a clip with the 2mm, but I'm going to clip one and see how I feel about it. It's not bad. It's not bad. It's not bad. Where's my chits? There we go. All right. Eric Goebel, thank you so much. Much appreciated. Winter's Victory. So I think we finally got the thing on the table. Well, not on the table, but on this calendar for Winter's Victory. So hopefully you'll see a video on that topic from me. This week would be great, if not next week. So have a great night, and the support, as usual, is greatly appreciated. I Manatee, cool name, first of all, asks, how good or bad were the COA Civil War Campaign Series games? Like Lee Takes Command and Marching Through Georgia. So I had Marching Through Georgia and Mississippi Fortress at one point. And it is an area movement game, and it runs off of hidden information. So they are fundamentally not solitairable. Judd Vance, formerly of Hamtag, and I only say formerly because I don't know that Hamtag's done anything anytime recently, but it was a big proponent of this series. This is called the Civil War Campaign Series, and there were at least 5 or 6 volumes in it. It looks interesting, but like I said, fundamentally unsoloable. If that is important, you are not going to have good luck with it. However, there are some people that do like that series, and I want to say they were all very attractive Rick Barber maps as well. So Stigler says GBACW Light will be published along with the standard rules in 3 Dog Deluxe. That's very interesting. Will they be selling that GBACW Light separately as well? I would hope so. All right, John Stanley, thank you so much for stopping by. Stigler says this has been content rich in the extreme, even though we spent an hour talking about Winterfest and the GMT update. So I hope so. And, this isn't going to be the last we hear of Civil War stuff on the show. I feel like maybe I'll start steering us toward a conclusion. What's a good starting point for blind swords? Pick a battle that interests you, is the easy answer to that. But I'd go with one of the later games, even though you don't have the advantage of the tremendous Rick Barber maps with the later games, as you do with the earlier games because of Barber's untimely passing. But they're still really nice. So Rob Moffat, thanks for stopping by. My favorite's probably Longstreet Attacks, but part of the reason for that is that it's a battle. It's Gettysburg, right? It's a battle I'm reasonably familiar with, so I don't have to do a bunch of additional legwork or research figuring out what the battle was like before playing the game. Not that I'm an expert on Gettysburg or any other Civil War topic. Don't get me wrong, but at least I have some background on it. But it isn't the whole battle either. It's not even the whole second day. It's just Longstreet stuff on the second day. So if you want the entire battle, then you're going to find that Longstreet Attacks is maybe not that satisfying. I don't know that I have that particular problem. I don't know. There we go. I'm having some contrast issues on a couple of these. I don't, other than that, though, I mean, pick a battle that interests you. I mean, that's the most important thing for war games anyway, right? Is to just find a topic that you're interested in. If you are really interested in a topic, then you'd be probably surprised yourself by just how much the complexity doesn't bother you, right? Well, we did, in fact, get... we did, in fact, get Stonewall's sword in less than half a counter trade. There's a little bit of breathing space in there, and I did use my trade dividers. So Longstreet Attacks is good. P Ridge is an interesting battle, but that's another one of the earlier games. This is like one of the very early games as well. Did they do Wilson's Creek? I'm not sure. The ones I've played were P Ridge, Longstreet Attacks, and was there another one? Maybe. Grand Havoc, which is one of the more recent ones. All right, awesome. Mark G picked up Into the Woods. That is a deep end of the pool. Just so you know, even by standards of GBACW, which is a complicated game anyway. All right, so Justigard points that earlier Blind Swords games have slightly different rule books because there wasn't a series rules yet. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I'd say probably go with one of the later ones. The two new ones are Sedgwick Attacks, which is Salem Church, and Chickasaw Bayou. And Chickasaw Bayou sounds interesting. I know almost nothing about that battle. Grand Havoc might be where I would look. That's Perryville. There you go. Eric Hansen picked it up. Yeah, I mean, if you got the right layout to do that, yeah, you could certainly do that. Death Valley's a great introductory point for GBACW, though. So, hold that thought, Vince Ree. So, I buy Blind Swords games. They are available nowadays in two different formats from Revolution Games. One of which comes in a box. It's a 1-inch bookcase-sized box. Or you can buy it in a Ziploc bag and save yourself 10 or 15 bucks. I buy them in the Ziplocs. The reason is because I have created these storage boxes for Blind Swords out of these mailing envelopes, and I can get reliably three Blind Swords games in one of these, and that is a 33.33% shelf width savings. And I am all about that. So I will continue to buy Blind Swords games in the Ziploc format for this reason. You can fit two GMT counter trays and the rest of the games in one of these boxes. And they fit quite comfortably. And Mander says there is a Blind Swords on Wilson's Creek. I thought so. But I have Thunder at Dawn. Yeah, okay. I think I'm getting mixed up with Thunder in the Ozarks, which is Pea Ridge. The Blind Swords boxes are nice. I've just got 550 war games, and I'm running out of space again. So we're gonna have to get on that building additional shelving at some point. Although that's really a winter project. But I'm going to put up another shelf thing. In general, the boxes from Revolution Games are nice. I just tend to buy their games in Ziplocs, and I'm fine with that. And I have mentioned the Cube for Me trays in the past. I really like those trays. If you are going to buy commercial counter trays, they are a little more expensive, but I think the best ones are the Cube for Me trays. I also like the Aegis trays from Flying Buffalo, or whatever they're calling themselves. But I do think that because of the additional sizes and configurations that are available in the Cube for Me trays, that they are enormously more efficient for storage. Because you could, to some extent, customize what you get, right? I've got, for example, there's different thicknesses of trays, there's different configurations as far as number of compartments. There's different like footprints, so you can get like one that's a little shorter, so you could just put it on top and still fit the decks of cards in the box. So I really strongly like the Cube for Me trays and happily endorse them. So, all right, folks, it is 10 p.m. So let's talk about what all is going on this week. With luck, there will be an unboxing video, which will be the latest issue of A World at War magazine. That should be out on Thursday. There will be a video interview done at Winterfest with the OCS team. If that's not out this week, it should be out next week. Same deal with the designer-assisted unboxing of Winter's Victory with designer and general all-around honcho Mark Hinkle, assuming that happens on time. Next week I don't remember what is queued up for next week, but I've got two more things from Columbia that they sent me that I'm going to do unboxings on, Bobby Lee and Sam Grant. Also Civil War, I might add. So Civil War is looking up right now over here. Still it was on the table all week when I was gone. US Civil War is up there because I want to recall how to actually play that. Red Strike. Yeah. So especially something like that, where it's like just an absolutely ridiculous quantity of product in the box. You really want some kind of really on top of it storage solution, right? So, and tomorrow night me and Dan and I will be on with Sam London of Firefight Tactical, coming from GMT. We're going to talk to him about wargame card games and to what extent Firefight Tactical fits into that category. So I guess I should mention this. Right now, because they have just been released, it's just the way Revolution does it, they are still available at the debut price. That price will go up a little bit at some point in the future. So... So folks, remember to thumbs up the video if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Big shout outs to the patrons of Ardwulf's Lair, without whose support and encouragement we wouldn't be able to keep doing this stuff at all. So thank you, patrons. And we'll have a patron shout out here in a second. And don't forget about the affiliate link to Noble Knight. You can get me some store credit by shopping at Noble Knight through the affiliate link and help me get a campaign for North Africa, which will be absolutely ludicrous addition to the collection. We'll see what happens when we get to 100%. I think we went from like 13 to 58% in the last month, so progress has been stellar so far. But I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, and we will be again with you tomorrow if you want to tune in with Dan, and then otherwise we will be back next week. So everybody have a great night, and we'll see you all again soon.